I was quietly uninvited from my mom's birthday photos for not looking good next to my sister's boyfriend. He later came to my office as a prospective partner and everything about our family evening looked different in the harsh light of work and reputation.
My mother loves ceremony.
She always has.
Birthdays, garden teas, the tiny rituals that hold our family together look effortless from the outside, but are actually the result of a week of lists, phone calls, and a stubborn elbow for perfection. So when the invitation for her 62nd birthday landed in my inbox, I felt warm and a little proud that I'd managed to RSVP yes between work projects and the kids' school schedules. A week before the party, my sister Rachel called to ask what I was planning to wear. I told her I had a navy wrap dress in the closet that was comfortable and not dramatic. She paused and then asked if I might wear something simpler, something that would not clash with her outfit because she wanted her new boyfriend to take pictures with her. It felt like a joking sisterly note at first, and we laughed it off. I put the dress back on the hanger and bought a modest cardigan instead. Then, 2 days before the party, Rachel texted me a screenshot. It was a group text from Mom with a line that read she really wanted the evening to be about family photos and asked everyone to avoid anything that might distract. Underneath, someone had added an aside about not dressing in ways that upstage or make others look less put together. I won't pretend I did not notice the tone. There was a difference between asking for tasteful attire and implying someone should be toned down. My chest tightened. I showed the screenshots to my husband Daniel, and he shrugged in that soft way. He does that means he's annoyed but not about to escalate.
My mother called that night.
She was gentle and said she would be upset if anything stole the attention from the family that night. I said I understood and tried not to let the words burn. What I did not say was that I felt like I was being asked to efface myself for the sake of an image of family that fit someone else's idea of perfect. The party became a test without rules. I kept my outfit conservative and tidy. I told myself that appearances were small if it meant mothers had happy nights. What I did not know was that an idea about who should look good and who should not was already moving through the living room like a draft, and it was warming certain people and leaving others cold. The night of the party started exactly how my mother wanted. Candles glowed on the table, there was a playlist of familiar songs, and the house smelled of roast. The children were tucked in at my in-laws, and Daniel had taken the evening off. I arrived early to help with last-minute things and to avoid that stagey moment when people file in and stand like actors with cocktail napkins. Rachel showed up with a small flowering plant and a nervous smile. Her boyfriend, a soft-featured, earnest 20-something named Tyler, followed, arms full of a gift bag and a sheepish energy I would later remember as Key. He was handsome in a way that was tidy and designed for social media, and he seemed to perk up when the room arranged itself for the small domestic theater my mother loved. Toward the middle of dinner, my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen and said in a voice that tried for casual that Rachel had texted her with a concern that my outfit might photograph badly next to Tyler. She said it as if she were telling me a weather report. I felt hot and then small. I tried to make a joke and she did not laugh. She told me she had decided, because she wanted the evening to be seamless, to uninvite me from the family photo portion and to ask if I would sit out and serve coffee instead. She apologized in the exact way people apologize when they know what they are doing is mean, but socially sanctioned. It felt like a slap not because of what was practical, but because of what it implied. The idea that I needed to be moved to the edge of the scene for someone else to shine carried a humiliation I could not swallow. Rachel, when I confronted her quietly, looked guilty and said she did not mean for it to be hurtful, but that she had been nervous about how her boyfriend would look in photos, and she did not want any side glances. Tyler stood at the doorway like someone who had been instructed on how to be pleasant. His eyes flicked toward me, and then away. I left the table to pour coffee because they asked, and because I did not want to create a scene with my mother's friends present. Standing by the counter with my hands on a steaming pot, friends murmuring about dessert and holidays in the dining room, I felt a tightness that was less about clothes and more about being erased. I had not been uninvited from a party before, not really, and the exact way my family did it felt like an instruction manual for social invisibility. Afterward, a few guests came to the kitchen to ask how I had walked in and out so calmly and praised my patience. They did not see the small tremor in my hands or the way my throat had worked around words I refused to let out. That night there were whispers the next day. A neighbor who had been at the party texted that people were surprised about the arrangement and that someone had joked about not wanting awkward photos. Social media, as it does, turned the evening into a little event and people began to speculate who had been offended, who had been asked to step back, and why a family would publicly arrange who gets to look better. Meanwhile, I felt that quiet, ugly thing under my skin that happens when you realize your body has become a kind of currency in someone else's ledger. It was not only Rachel or Mom. There was an entire logic in our town that polished certain faces for photos and arranged others into the background. I had lived with a steady awareness of how I read in rooms for years, but this felt like a deliberate, performative dismissal. At work, where I am a director at a small but respected design firm, the story drifted in like dust. Office water cooler chatter is often cruel without intending it. Someone who knew Rachel vaguely mentioned Tyler was in marketing and had a lot of followers. Someone else dropped that he might be looking for connections. I felt suddenly small and oddly public. I tried to shrug, but the image of being pushed to the periphery had a visceral, humiliating echo. A few days later, Rachel messaged that Tyler felt awful and asked if he could talk to me. I said yes with a flatness that concealed anything but curiosity. His apology or his awkwardness could be a route to some closure. When we met at a quiet coffee shop, he sat with hands folded, eyes darting, and told me in the complicated honesty of someone trying to be decent that he felt embarrassed about the whole thing. He had not known the family dynamic, he said, and he thought the idea came from a place of wanting to look good around his new girlfriend. I wanted to tell him that the problem was not him. The problem was a backstage culture that edited people out of frames so others could look shiny. What surprised me in that conversation was a small detail he dropped about work. He said he freelanced in social and part-time helped at a small nonprofit. He spoke easily about algorithms and making things trend. It sounded unremarkable. I did not think at that time that he would become entangled in my life in the way the future would uncannily arrange. I try to keep my professional life separate from the domestic combustions of my family, but sometimes those spheres collide. A week after the party, I was at the office when my chief of staff flagged me in for a quick meeting. We had a new client inquiry from a young creative agency that specialized in influencer strategy. The contact name read Tyler Perkins. I smirked initially and thought of the party and my own small wound. I asked Julia, my chief of staff, for the email and skimmed the portfolio. The agency was scrappy and lean in a way that suggested hustle and not inflated claims. The pitch was clever. Later that day, Tyler emailed again with a follow-up and attached a case study. When I opened it, I found the kind of work my firm admired: thoughtful copy, confident visuals, and a network of small collaborations. The name struck me in a new way. This was not simply the boyfriend who had been advised to manage optics at a family dinner. This was someone trying to build a career. Small cities trade on small worlds, and the web of who knows whom can entangle strangers. Tyler's agency had recently won a grant I sat in on as part of a local advisory panel. I remember the meeting because my firm had recommended one of the projects he mentioned, and because we had discussed how to support young entrepreneurs. It was a tiny world. I sat back at my desk and felt that odd flip where personal indignation collides with professional responsibility. We set up an exploratory call, because in my job I am supposed to evaluate talent rather than hold grudges. The ethical line was thin, but it was there. When Tyler and I spoke, he came across as earnest and ambitious. He apologized again for the party mess and thanked me for agreeing to speak professionally. He asked about creative direction, and the conversation turned quickly into portfolios and timelines. I remember thinking of my mother's candles and of how private slights can turn into public collaborations without anyone setting out a map. Still, a corner of me had a prickle. What if the work relationship blurred the edges of what had happened at the party? What if this was another route for people to shape narratives about who belongs in pictures? The agency's proposal made sense. They had a nimble approach and a tone my firm liked. We were in a phase where partnering with young producers could invigorate our client roster. After internal discussion, I recommended a small pilot partnership and signed off on a mentorship line item. The mentorship meant some of our senior team, including me, would advise on creative development. Tyler was assigned to work with my team on a pilot campaign. It felt professional and right. I tried to downplay the oddness when the team circled the calendar and put his name on the schedule. At the first working session, Tyler was polite and smart and oddly deft with small details. He listened when others spoke and offered concise edits to a landing page that made the copy cleaner. The room warmed to him. He was not the Instagram archetype I had feared at the party. He was a competent young professional, and watching him in that room gave me the strange permission to see more than the moment where he had been reluctant to make a scene. As the campaign moved forward, he logged hours and took direction with a humility that made him easy to mentor. I started checking in more often. There were awkward moments for me internally. Every time he joked, I noted it and then put the observation away. I kept the line between professionalism and personal intact. What surprised me, though, was the day he asked for a coffee outside of work because he wanted to explain something that had been eating at him since the party. He told me that he had been humiliated by the family's request and that he had only wanted to be seen as someone who respected my sister. He had not planned to be part of any family drama. Then, in the middle of the apology, he admitted that he had felt conflicted because he had also admired my career from afar. He had followed some of our work online and had once hoped to find an opportunity to learn from people like me. The admission landed between us like a small, fragile truce. I did not think much more of it until a client dinner where he arrived unexpectedly. The firm had invited him as part of the mentorship showcase, and he walked in with an easy smile. Halfway through the meal, one of our clients loudly thanked the young team and added a line about how rare it was to find a rising creative that also had real-world grit. Suddenly, the room's attention pivoted toward Tyler, and a coworker nudged me and said, with a laugh, "You realize how good his numbers are on the youth campaign." The praise was sincere. That is when someone, in a low aside, mentioned he had been talking to the press about his hustle. It was small, and then it wasn't. The social arc that had hinted at optics at my mother's party now had a counterweight. Tyler was doing good work, and it showed in measurable ways. When my sister saw a feature online where a local magazine highlighted Tyler as a promising creative, she texted a string of emojis. The landscape had shifted. Suddenly, the person who had been awkward at my mother's table had leverage the family had not accounted for. I felt a mix of vindication and unease. Work had turned into a form of truth that the dinner's shallow choreography could not erase. I thought the tension would ease with the discovery that Tyler was actually competent and that my firm's backing might smooth things. Instead, the discovery amplified the petty dynamics that small families do so well. Rachel's pride shifted to a different register. Instead of apologizing to me for pushing me aside, she seemed buoyed by the idea that her boyfriend was now visible in the press as promising. Mom started to call often and float compliments toward Tyler in ways that made me feel like the atmosphere in the kitchen had changed, and I had not been told the script. At a neighborhood block party a couple weeks later, I ran into Rachel and it happened. She made a joke about how sometimes optics matter, and then said with a sideways look that it was nice to have a professional worthy of photo ops in the family now. The joke landed like a cold stone. I laughed politely and moved on. Inside, something hardened. The professional distance I'd tried to keep blurred when Rachel confronted me outright in the car one afternoon. She asked me to explain why I had been so quiet about Tyler's talent at the last family call when a cousin had commented on him. I told her truthfully that I had no obligation to promote someone's career at the expense of my own dignity. She accused me of being petty and small. She said she felt judged for choosing someone who excited her. Her voice shook in the way people do when they want someone to meet them halfway and are not sure that will happen. The confrontation escalated because it touched a nerve I had held tight, the way families often weaponize appearances and status. Rachel's words suggested that she would rather be the family's curated image than be the person who sits next to a woman with a life that did not fit their neat aesthetic. I wanted to tell her that career and character are not a single strand. That afternoon, we both said things we could not immediately take back. After the argument, I took several days off from messages and meetings to think. Work continued. Tyler's campaign moved into a second phase, and in between there were a string of uncomfortable domestic moments where photos were captioned in ways that exposed more than they hid. It became clear the issue had outgrown a single night and become a set of decisions about who we were as a family and who we valued. There is a moment in situations like these when a choice compresses into a thin, clear option. Stay silent, preserve the brittle piece, and watch the slow erasure continue. Or step forward and name what was wrong even if it causes a rift. I spent a long night trying to decide which ego to feed and which to starve. The next family gathering was an anniversary dinner at my parents' house. The table was set with the same precision as always, and there was an air of expectation. My sister arrived and gave me a quick smile that felt like a rope thrown across a thin river. Tyler arrived and nodded formally. People greeted each other, and the conversation skated along the top of food and weather. At dessert, when attention drifted to phone photos, I did something small and public. I asked if I could say something about the way we arrange our family images. I said it without heat, listing the ways that night had made me feel invisible and explaining that the decision to uninvite someone for the sake of appearing polished was small but consequential. I said the truth, that people carry more than outfits into a room, that erasing someone's presence creates a ripple of shame that lasts longer than a portrait. There was a pause, the kind that feels like someone pressed pause on a record and forgot to unstick it. Rachel looked surprised. Mom's jaw unclenched and then tightened again. Tyler listened with a face like a student learning that an exam could reward honesty over polish. Some people nodded. Some shifted in their chairs. Daniel reached across the table and took my hand, and that small squeeze made the choice feel less lonely. Afterward, the room was not instantly healed, but a conversation had begun that could not be undone. My sister and I did not reconcile that night, but we did not become more distant. Later, Tyler pulled me aside and admitted he had been naive and wanted to make amends. He also said something that altered the frame. He did not want our dinner to be about his reputation in the way my sister feared. He wanted to do the work of being decent. Work continued, and the mentorship delivered results. The campaign won a minor award, and the client praised the team publicly. Those were small facts. The larger change was that the family had to confront that optics were not a moral compass. Repairing is mostly small work. It is not cinematic. It is coffee conversations, apologies that feel modest and real, and learning how to be consistent. Tyler continued to show up to work, and I continue to show up to lead. He brought humility and a steady curiosity, and, critically, he started to shine for reasons that were not attached to who he was dating. Rachel and I talked more often about what we expected from each other. She admitted that she had been embarrassed and that the need to control the photo moment came from insecurity. I admitted that I had let dread make me smaller than I wanted to be. We did not cure each other in a single afternoon, but the friction softened. My mother, who had always valued the look of things, found that letting people exist without careful framing opened her to a new sort of surprise. She asked Tyler to speak at a small community art night. He accepted and did so with a modest, articulate presence that made her beam in a different way than polished photos ever could. At the firm, Tyler's growth was clear. He learned to take feedback and to convert it into better work. He publicly credited the mentorship he received and said things about learning to show up as oneself rather than as a curated highlight. Those words mattered. People began to treat him like a professional instead of a social accessory. The family dynamic adjusted. Rachel and I still had moments we had to navigate, but they no longer hinged on one-sided expectations. Our photos did not always look like magazine spreads. They looked like families do when they're living the messy work of being human. I found a kind of peace in the smallness of daily gestures. The way Tyler now brought an extra pie and set it on the counter like he belonged to the kitchen, not just the photo. The arc did not lead to fireworks. The more meaningful shift was a small public acknowledgement that came 9 months after the party. The local paper ran a piece about the mentorship program and highlighted the pilot we ran. Tyler was quoted about how mentors helped him focus, and he specifically mentioned the team at my firm for the practical advice. He wrote a line that said we all had more to learn about what matters. When Rachel saw the piece, she called and said she was proud. Her voice had a note I had not heard in a long time. It was not about validation through optics, but about seeing someone you love get better at showing up. My mother sent a text that said she had been proud that week at the community event. The small ripples of repair continued. At the next birthday, we actually took a family photo where I stood next to Rachel and Tyler without being asked to move. The photo did not go viral. It did not need to. What mattered was that no one had been edited out. My sister hugged me afterward and said she was sorry for the hurt. She did not try to erase the past, but wanted to move forward without using appearances as a wedge. Work and family continued, sometimes uneasily. Tyler and I kept our professional boundaries clear, and he thrived in his role. The lesson that stuck was simple and practical. Who looks good in a photo is less important than who shows up for the hard work later. Update: 2 years later. 2 years after that awkward birthday, the family landscape is different in small, steady ways. Tyler has launched his own creative studio, and his work is respectable in the local circuit. He still pops into the office to say hello and occasionally jokes about the time he was almost a problematic photo prop. Rachel and I have rebuilt trust on the foundation of many small, consistent acts. She calls sometimes to ask advice about interviews or events, and I actually enjoy being useful. My mother has stopped micro-curating family images and started organizing community nights where people come with their imperfect selves. Dad laughs more and worries less about how chairs are aligned. Daniel teases that our family photos look more real now and that he likes them better. If I look back on the night I was asked to step aside, I feel the old sting. I do not pretend it was nothing. I also recognize that the wound opened a conversation about what we value and how we treat people when no cameras are watching. I do not know whether every family can do this work. It takes patience, humility, and people willing to choose presence over polish. Sometimes when I scroll my feed and see a glossy event photo, I remember the small knot in my chest and how odd it was to have been uninvited for looking like myself. Other times I look at a candid of the kids and Tyler handing them a plate of cookies, and I think that the messy, ordinary moments are the ones that survive. For now, that is enough.